We had to prioritize, my stepmom said with a smile. I was seated at the last table at Dad's wedding. What I discovered that day about my family's real priorities changed everything. When the truth came out, I realized I'd been living a lie for 15 years. We had to prioritize, my stepmom said with a smile. I was seated at the last table at Dad's wedding. Let me paint you the full picture of that moment, because the details matter. The setting was the Grandview Manor in Millbrook Heights, this sprawling estate venue with manicured gardens and crystal chandeliers that cost more per hour than most people make in a month. The kind of place that screams we spared no expense and this is the most important day of our lives. White roses everywhere, a string quartet playing softly during cocktail hour. Servers in crisp uniforms carrying champagne flutes on silver trays, picture perfect, Instagram ready, the works. I'm standing there in my carefully chosen navy blue dress, not too flashy, not too plain. The kind of outfit you wear when you want to look appropriate for your father's special day without upstaging the bride. I'd spent 3 hours getting ready that morning. Hair professionally done at Salon Luxe on 5th Street, makeup that took 45 minutes to apply, nails that I'd gotten done 2 days prior because I wanted everything to be perfect. This wasn't just any wedding. This was my dad's wedding. Richard Blackwood's wedding. My father, who I'd been trying to rebuild a relationship with for the past 5 years after he left my mom when I was 17. I'm Sophia Blackwood, by the way, 32 years old, marketing director at Pinnacle Creative Solutions in downtown Riverside. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment on Maple Street that I've been decorating with furniture from West Elm and plants. I somehow managed to keep alive despite working 60-hour weeks. I drive a Honda Civic that's paid off, I have a 401k, I pay my taxes on time, and I call my grandmother every Sunday. I'm what most people would consider a functioning adult with her life together. And I'm standing in this beautiful venue, surrounded by roughly 200 guests, looking for my seat. The reception area is set up with round tables covered in ivory linens, each one topped with centerpieces of white hydrangeas and baby's breath. Table numbers written in elegant calligraphy on small easels. Tables 1 through 15 are closest to the head table where Dad and his new wife Celeste Morrison Blackwood will be sitting. Prime real estate, the best views of the dance floor, the easiest access to the bar, close enough to hear every speech without straining. I scan the seating chart posted on a beautiful wooden easel wrapped in tall and fairy lights. My eyes move across the names, looking for Sophia Blackwood or even just Sophia. Table 5, maybe, that would make sense. I'm the bride of honor, after all. Well, not technically, but I'm his daughter. His only child, actually. Until Celeste came along with her twin 15-year-old boys, Jackson and Tyler Morrison. Not table 5. Maybe table 8, still respectable. Close enough to feel included, far enough to not interfere with immediate family dynamics. Not table 8 either. I keep scanning. Table 12, table 15, my stomach starts doing this weird flippy thing, like when you're in an elevator that stops too suddenly. Table 18, table 22, table 30. This is when I start to realize something is very, very wrong. Table 35, table 40. My hands are getting sweaty now, leaving little fingerprints on the edge of the seating chart display. Other guests are lined up behind me, cheerfully looking for their own seats, chatting about how beautiful the ceremony was, how lovely Celeste looked in her dress, how happy Dad seemed. Table 44. Table 45, table 46, and then I see it, table 47. The very last table, tucked into the far corner of the reception hall, practically hidden behind a decorative pillar. The table that's so far from the action that you need binoculars to see the head table. The table reserved for people who barely made the guest list. The afterthought table. Sophia Blackwood, table 47. I stare at those words for a full 30 seconds, thinking maybe I'm reading it wrong. Maybe there's another Sophia. Maybe this is a mistake. Maybe the wedding planner mixed up the cards, or maybe Dad doesn't know about the seating arrangement and would fix it immediately if he did. But even as I'm thinking these things, I know they're not true. Wedding seating charts don't happen by accident. Especially not for a wedding that cost what this one obviously cost. Every detail has been planned, discussed, approved. Every name has been placed deliberately. I make my way to table 47, weaving through the other tables, past clusters of Dad's colleagues from Blackwood Financial Consulting, past Celeste's book club friends, past what looks like her entire extended family from Sacramento, the closer. I get to my table, the more distant the sounds of laughter and conversation become. It's like walking away from a party while it's still happening. Table 47 sits 8 people. When I arrive, 5 seats are already taken. There's Marcus, the wedding photographer's assistant. A kid who can't be more than 22 and keeps checking his phone. There's Mrs. Eleanor Fitzgerald, someone's elderly aunt who doesn't seem to know anyone and is quietly working her way through the bread basket. There's David Chen, who I overhear telling someone he's Celeste's accountants plus one, and has never actually met the bride and groom. There's Jennifer Walsh, a woman about my age who introduces herself as Tyler's girlfriend's mom. Apparently she got invited because her 16-year-old daughter is dating one of Celeste's sons. And then there's Craig Mullins, a jovial guy in his 50s who turns out to be the florist, the actual florist. The person who arranged the centerpieces is seated closer to my father's wedding ceremony than his own daughter. "You must be Sophia," Craig says cheerfully as I sit down. "Richard's daughter, right? I've heard so much about you." "I'm Craig. I did all the floral arrangements. Beautiful ceremony, wasn't it?" I manage a smile and nod, but inside I'm screaming. The florist has heard more about me than I apparently matter to this seating arrangement. As I'm taking all of this in, trying to process the reality of where I'm sitting and who I'm sitting with, I see her approaching. Celeste Morrison Blackwood, my new stepmother. She's gliding across the reception hall in her champagne-colored mother-of-the-bride dress, well, technically bride dress, since she's 53 and this is her second marriage. But she's definitely giving off bridal energy. Her blonde hair is perfectly styled in an updo that probably took 2 hours, and she's wearing pearls that look like they cost more than my car. She spots me at table 47 and her face lights up with this bright, practiced smile, the kind of smile that politicians use when they're about to deliver bad news but want to seem approachable while doing it. "Sophia, there you are," she says, reaching over to give me one of those air kisses that doesn't actually involve any physical contact. "I was wondering when you'd find your seat. How are you settling in? Everything looks beautiful, doesn't it?" "It's lovely," I managed to say, because what else do you say? "Really beautiful wedding. Thank you so much. Your father and I are just so happy you could be here. I know how busy you are with work and everything." She glances around the table, taking in my table mates. "I hope you don't mind the seating arrangement. We had such a challenge fitting everyone in. You know how it is with weddings, there are just so many people to consider, so many family obligations and work relationships and, well, politics, really. We had to prioritize," my stepmom said with a smile. I was seated at the last table at Dad's wedding. What I discovered that day about my family's real priorities changed everything. When the truth came out, I realized I'd been living a lie for 15 years. "We had to prioritize," my stepmom said with a smile. I was seated at the last table at Dad's wedding. Let me paint you the full picture of that moment, because the details matter. The setting was the Grandview Manor in Millbrook Heights. This sprawling estate venue with manicured gardens and crystal chandeliers that cost more per hour than most people make in a month. The kind of place that screams we spared no expense and this is the most important day of our lives. White roses everywhere, a string quartet playing softly during cocktail hour. Servers in crisp uniforms carrying champagne flutes on silver trays, picture perfect, Instagram ready, the works. I'm standing there in my carefully chosen navy blue dress, not too flashy, not too plain. The kind of outfit you wear when you want to look appropriate for your father's special day without upstaging the bride. I'd spent 3 hours getting ready that morning. Hair professionally done at Salon Luxe on 5th Street, makeup that took 45 minutes to apply, nails that I'd gotten done 2 days prior because I wanted everything to be perfect. This wasn't just any wedding. This was my dad's wedding. Richard Blackwood's wedding. My father, who I'd been trying to rebuild a relationship with for the past 5 years after he left my mom when I was 17. I'm Sophia Blackwood, by the way, 32 years old, marketing director at Pinnacle Creative Solutions in downtown Riverside. I live in a one-bedroom apartment on Maple Street that I've been decorating with furniture from West Elm and plants. I somehow managed to keep alive despite working 60-hour weeks. I drive a Honda Civic that's paid off. I have a 401k. She pats my shoulder gently, and then she's gone, floating back toward the head table where my father is sitting, looking handsome and happy in his charcoal gray tuxedo. Completely unaware that his only child is sitting at the kids' table equivalent of adult wedding seating. I sit there for a moment, watching her walk away, watching her stop at other tables to chat with guests, watching her laugh and smile and play the perfect hostess. She stops at table 3 to talk to her book club friends. She stops at table 7 to greet her family from Sacramento. She even stops at table 12 to chat with some of Dad's work colleagues. She doesn't stop at any tables past 20. The reception continues around me. Dinner is served. A choice between herb-crusted salmon and beef tenderloin, with sides that are clearly professionally catered and cost a fortune. The bread is warm and fresh. The salad has those fancy mixed greens and candied pecans. Everything tastes like money and careful planning. Craig the florist turns out to be excellent company. He tells me about his business, how he got into wedding florals, funny stories about bridezillas and last-minute changes. Mrs. Fitzgerald warms up after her second glass of wine and shares photos of her grandchildren. David Chen is actually pretty funny once he relaxes, making dry observations about the wedding industry that have me genuinely laughing. But the whole time, I'm hyper-aware of where I am, of how far I am from the head table, of how I have to crane my neck to see my father during the speeches, of how when the best man tells a funny story about Dad's college days, I can barely hear the punchline. During the father-daughter dance, or rather, the stepfather-stepdaughter dance, since Celeste's sons both dance with her while Dad stands to the side, beaming proudly, I watch from table 47. When they cut the cake, I watch from table 47. When Dad gives his speech about finding love again and building a new family, thanking everyone for being there to celebrate this new chapter in his life, I listen from table 47. He thanks Celeste for bringing joy back into his life. He thanks Jackson and Tyler for welcoming him as a stepdad. He thanks Celeste's parents for raising such an amazing daughter. He thanks his business partners for their friendship and support. He thanks the wedding party. He thanks the vendors. He thanks the venue staff. He doesn't mention me. Not once. It's not like I was expecting a dedicated paragraph or anything, but maybe just a thank you to my daughter Sophia for being here, or I'm grateful for my family. Both old and new. Something, anything, some acknowledgement that his actual biological child is present at his wedding, but there's nothing. From table 47, I watch as he raises his champagne glass for a toast to new beginnings, to blended families, and to the people who matter most in our lives, the people who matter most. I'm sitting at table 47, between the florist and someone's +1. And my father is toasting the people who matter most in his life. That's when I know, really know, not suspect, not wonder, not have a sinking feeling. No, I don't matter most. I don't even matter much. I'm an obligation that got fulfilled with an invitation and a dinner plate at the table furthest from everything that matters to him. But this is just the beginning of the story. Because what happened next, what I discovered about how this seating arrangement came to be, about the conversations that led to these priorities, about the family dynamics I'd been blind to for 15 years, that's what really changed everything. That's what made me understand that I'd been living in a fantasy about what family meant, about what my place in Dad's life actually was, about how little I actually knew about the people I'd been trying so hard to please. And by the end of this reception, by the end of the conversations I was about to overhear and the truths I was about to learn, I would walk out of that beautiful venue and never speak to my father again. But we're not there yet. We're still at table 47, where I'm about to learn exactly what we had to prioritize really meant, and how long this prioritization had been going on without me knowing it. Stay with me, because this gets so much worse before it gets better. Let me take you back to how this was all supposed to go, because 3 months ago, when Dad first called to tell me about the engagement, everything seemed normal. Well, as normal as things could be between us after years of carefully rebuilt relationship. It was a Tuesday evening in March, around 7 p.m. I was in my apartment on Maple Street, sitting on my gray sectional couch that I'd saved up 6 months to by eating leftover Thai food from Bangkok Garden and half watching some Netflix show about people renovating tiny houses. My phone rang and I saw Dad on the caller ID. We'd been talking maybe once every 2 weeks since he'd started dating Celeste seriously, so a random Tuesday call wasn't unusual. "Sophia, honey, I have some news," he said, and his voice had that excited, slightly nervous quality that I hadn't heard since I was a kid, and he was telling me we were going to Disneyland for my birthday. "Good news, I hope," I said, muting the TV and giving him my full attention. "The best news. Celeste and I are getting married." I felt this immediate rush of complicated emotions. Happiness for him, because he'd seemed genuinely lighter and more content in the 2 years since he'd been with Celeste. Nervousness for myself, because I knew this would change our already fragile dynamic, and honestly, relief that he was calling to tell me personally instead of me finding out through some other channel. "Dad, that's wonderful," I said, and I meant it. "I'm so happy for you. When's the big day?" "June 15th. We're thinking something elegant but not too big. Maybe 150 people, 200 at most, nothing to elaborate. But Celeste deserves a beautiful wedding. It's been 30 years since her first marriage, and mine with your mother was," he trailed off, like he always did when our conversation accidentally wandered into the territory of his divorce from Mom. "It's going to be perfect," I said, filling the awkward silence. "Have you set a venue yet?" "Actually, yes. Celeste found this amazing place called Grandview Manor in Millbrook Heights. Beautiful gardens, gorgeous interior. The works. We went to look at it last weekend and fell in love immediately." He sounded so excited, so genuinely happy, that I found myself smiling despite the weird knot in my stomach. This was good. This was Dad moving forward with his life, finding happiness again. I should be thrilled. That sounds incredible. And I'm sure Celeste is over the moon. "Have you started planning everything else? The dress, the flowers, the dough?" "You know Celeste. She's already got binders full of ideas, Pinterest boards, vendor lists, the whole 9 yards. She's in her element. Actually, that's part of why I'm calling. We'd love for you to be involved in the planning if you want to be. Nothing too intense, but maybe help with some decisions. Be part of the process." This surprised me. In the 2 years I'd known Celeste, our relationship had been polite but distant. Pleasant enough during family dinners, friendly during holiday gatherings, but not exactly close. The idea of wedding planning together felt both exciting and intimidating. "I'd love that," I said. "Really? Whatever you need, wonderful. Celeste will be so pleased. She's been saying how much she wants you to feel included in everything. You're going to be family, after all." "Well, more family, you know what I mean? More family." It was a sweet way to put it, acknowledging that I was already his family while welcoming the expansion. Over the next few weeks, I got exactly 3 texts from Celeste about wedding planning. The first was asking if I preferred white roses or ivory roses for the centerpieces. The second was asking my opinion on string quartet versus jazz trio for cocktail hour. The third was asking if I thought salmon or chicken would be better for the main course. I responded thoughtfully to each one, offering my opinions and asking follow-up questions to show I was engaged, but the conversations never developed beyond those initial exchanges. It felt like she was checking a box, include Sophia in planning, rather than genuinely wanting my input. Still, I told myself this was fine. This was normal. Not every stepmother-stepdaughter relationship looked the same, and we were both adults navigating a new dynamic. The important thing was that Dad was happy and I was being included at all. I bought a new dress specifically for the wedding, navy blue, knee-length. Classic but not boring. I made hair and nail appointments. I cleared my calendar for the entire weekend, even though it was during a particularly busy time at work with the Henderson account launch. I bought a wedding gift. A beautiful crystal vase from Williams-Sonoma that cost more than I usually spend on gifts but felt appropriate for such an important occasion. I was genuinely excited, maybe cautiously excited, but excited nonetheless. This felt like a new chapter for all of us. Dad would have a partner who made him happy. I'd have a step family, which was something I'd never experienced. Celeste's twin boys, Jackson and Tyler, seemed like good kids from the few times I'd met them. A little distant with me, but they were 15-year-old boys. Distant was probably their default setting with most adults. The week before the wedding, I even bought a card for Dad and Celeste. Not just a generic wedding card, but one I spent 20 minutes picking out at Hallmark, reading through options until I found one that felt right. It talked about new beginnings and blended families and the joy of watching people you love find happiness together. I wrote a heartfelt message inside about how proud I was of Dad and how happy I was to welcome Celeste into our family. I imagined giving it to them at the reception. Maybe during a quiet moment when they weren't surrounded by guests. I pictured Dad getting a little emotional reading it, the way he used to when I was little and made him Father's Day cards with construction paper and glitter. The morning of the wedding, I woke up early and took extra time getting ready. I wanted to look perfect, not just for the photos but because this felt important. This felt like one of those days that would matter, that I'd look back on as significant. I drove to Grandview Manor feeling nervous but optimistic, ready to celebrate Dad's happiness, ready to be part of this new family configuration, ready to embrace whatever came next. I had no idea I was driving toward the most humiliating and eye-opening experience of my adult life. I had no idea that, while I was carefully choosing the perfect outfit and writing heartfelt cards, conversations were happening about where I fit in this new family structure. Conversations about priorities and obligations and who really mattered. I walked into that beautiful venue thinking I was Dad's daughter coming to celebrate his wedding. I had no idea I was actually an inconvenient guest who'd been invited out of obligation and seated accordingly.